Beautiful.
91. 90.
Now, this Sikha from the Rabbi came as a following to
You're all in order, from the top down.
the famous Sikha that the Rabbi gave on the night of Kof Ches Nisan, Toshin Nun Aleph. Yeah. And this Sikha came as a fairly close hemshech to that famous Sikha. And so the Rebbe refers to it and to other Sikhas that he gave over at that time, which were all in the same general theme of a tremendous influence, how each and every individual should see it as his personal task, and not only his personal task, but his personal responsibility to bring and to do actions in his life to bring Moshiach B'Pel Mami, and to be Megala, the situation in the world which will lead immediately take it from Miyad to the Gilui of Moshiach in such a way that it will be possible to say that Moshiach has already come. Not that we'll be saying he is due any minute, but the Lashon Bo, come, will be used in the past sense that he's already here. That should be the aim of every individual in his personal life. And in the famous Sikha of Kof Ches Nisan, the Rebbe literally passed what you might call the personal responsibility for the Mashiach campaign from his personal leadership into the property of every one of Anash and every Yid to be found in the world. The Rebbe wanted that each person should see himself as a functioning individual power on his own that can bring Mashiach. In other words, that no longer should people say this is the Rebbe's mivtza and it's the Rebbe's acharaya adequate, his responsibility, and he's working at it and we're just helping him. Ella, that everybody should see that he is a key figure and he's a key factor in the coming of Mashiach in his own right, that he has the ability, if he will be what the Rabbi called a action, how to say, obstinate, and he will insist, and he will hopefully join up with other actionim. But even if he doesn't, just if he's only one, but he really means it with all of his might and all of his soul, then he can be a power to bring Mashiach all on his own. That was the unbelievable message that came over in that famous Sikha. So the Rebbe said, Kwan is boah b'sichas hakoidme. This one thing I'll just make a bracha on. Amen.
What?
188.
I know. Yeah. I haven't got the answer.
So the Rebbe, it's already been explained in previous Sikhas. Ala tzorech, the great necessity, shekol echod ve'echod, each individual, yasa hakoel, kedei lahovi es hagiula b'poel, that each individual should do everything he can to bring the Gula B'Poel and see it his personal task and responsibility. Take you from Miyad Mamich, and the bringing of Moshiach should be immediately, and it's tremendously urgent, and it has to happen immediately. Mikivan shekoes, it says the Rabbi, at this particular moment, acharei chodesh Nisan shel shana zu.
Rego.
Hey,
Rega. Who turned out the light?
After Chodesh Nisan of this particular year, and it's one on that this was Toshin Nun Aleph, and the Rabbi was Mafarish, the Rosh Hashanah of the word Toshin Nun Aleph, as Tehei Nizim or Niflois, from Arenu, the Hashem should reveal to us openly the Niflois Arenu. So the Rabbi said, after Chodesh Nisan of this year, meaning that this year is Beklal very fitting and worthy that Mashiach should come, and Chodesh Nisan is the Chodesh HaGeula. Yeah, and we've been through the whole Chodesh Nisan. Bora L'kol Hadayos. It's clear to all opinions. It doesn't matter what your view may be of the whole issue of Mashiach, but it should be Bora according to all authorities in our sages and in Poiskim and Meforshim Beklal. It's a Mashiach Tzorich Lovei Takef Miyad Mamid. That Mashiach has to come, and he has to come immediately, without any delay, on the spot. The Takef Nuchol Loima Shel Mashiach Kfaba. In other words, the Lashon Mashiach Bo won't be like a present and future statement, saying it like in the present tense, but hinting at the future that he is coming and he's right on the way, but it will be in the past tense. We'll say Bo, meaning he's already here. That's we've got to bring to such a situation. So he says, Koesh nireh. At this moment we're going to see and examine Eich b'diuk oisim zois. How are we going to do that? How are we going to turn such an augureous moment that's the completion of Nisan, and it's the Shnas Niflois Arenu, and it's all the Inyanim coming together, and everybody's seeing it now as his personal responsibility. And then how do we do it? How do we actually do this in action to bring Mashiach B'Poel? Ve'ei kol zeh mudgash b'Shabbos kodesh zeh. And the Rebbe said how all of that is to be found in a very emphasized way in this particular Shabbos Pasha Tazria Metzora. He said the Rebbe, B'Pasha Shavua, Shekorim, HaShabbos B'Boiker, V'gam B'Pasha Shekorim B'Mincha. And not only that, but also in Pasha Achrei, which we read on Shabbos Tazria Metzora for Mincha, we'll also be able to find indications that Mashiach is imminent in that Pasha also. And he said, B'Pirkei Oves, Anikroim B'Shabbos, and also we'll find a remez to this whole inyan in the chapter of Pirkei Oves, which is Perek Sheni, that we read also on this Shabbos. So the Rebbe said, and also we'll find a remez to the coming and the imminence of Moshiach in the date, a tarikh of Chodesh Iyar, that's going to be, the Rebbe is going to learn from the actual day of the month in Chodesh Iyar, and then is the Sfiras O'ema Shesefrim B'Shabbos, and also from the actual mitzvah of Sfiras O'ema and the number and the content of the Sfiras O'ema, from that also. In other words, the Rebbe sees that the whole Shabbos is just full of Moshiach. The whole parsha is, even the parsha we're going to read of Mincha, the Pirkei Oves, how they call it, the date of the Sfiras O'ema, everything on this particular Shabbos. How do they use the expression in the famous advertisements? A Shabbos shekuloi Moshiach. A Shabbos that's all Moshiach. That's the way. And the truth is that the Rebbe says in the Sikha, before he even begins talking about all these pratim, he says that whenever it comes to Shabbos, you should always wake up about Moshiach. He said because it's brought down at the end of Masechta Tomid, has brought down about the shirim that the Levium used to sing in the Beis Hamikdash every day. There was the Shiur Shel Yom that the Levium used to sing in the Beis Hamikdash on that particular day. Yeah, like we say, Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbos, Shaboy Hoyu Levium Eimrim B'Beis Hamikdash. So it reckons out all the different shirim, and then it brings down on Shabbos. On Shabbos they used to say Shiur, Mizmer Shiur L'Yom Shabbos, and then the Gemara says, yeah, why did they sing such a song? Because that hints L'Yom Shekula Shabbos. That's hinting that the day was just going to be completely Shabbos. U'menucha l'chayei lomim. That's how the Lashon of the Gemara in Masechta Tomid completes it all with those words. Because the Gemara is saying that why do they sing that particular perik of the Shabbos? Because that's Maramas to the Yom Shekula Shabbos, which is the time of Moshiach. U'menucha l'chayei lomim, and menucha, everlasting menucha, and that's how the Gemara Masechta Tomid finishes. So the Rabbi said, you see that every Shabbos is connected with Shabbos hi of Manucha l'chayei lomim. That Shabbos is indicatory of Liyosid Lovei and of Manucha forever. So therefore every Shabbos is a reminder of Mashiach. How much more so when you got all these combinations, which we're now going to see. So he said, Paparsha Seinu, Tazria, Metzora, Roim, Babiro, Es Hagiula. He said in this Parsha, which is two parshas joined together, Tazria and Metzora, we see openly and clearly the Geula. How? So he said, Parshas Tazria, Maschila b'milim, that Parshas Tazria opens with the words, Isha ki Tazria v'yaldo zocha. A woman who will literally give seed, she will give forth seed, she will be adequate, fruitful and seedful, and she will give birth to a male. So the Rebbe said, Beklau, it's brought down in Sforim and Befrat in Chassidus, that later the concept of birth is Morel Gula. The whole idea of birth indicates Geula. For us, because Koloid, that there hasn't been birth, there's an embryo, but the embryo is hidden. It's how do you call it, inside the rectum of the mother, and it's in a state of concealment. So you can't really see what it's all about, and it's not able to express itself. But when it comes out into the world, it's revealed, it's redeemed from that state of being, as it were, in prison. The blood is like in a form of an incarceration in there. It's not able to express itself fully. When it comes out, it opens up into a functioning human being. So therefore, the Indian of later Beklal is indicatory of Geula. So therefore, he says, Kenema biyudei haGeula. And we see that the Nevi'im, when they talk about the Geula, they use the concept of birth as being indicatory of the Geula. For instance, it's written, V'yoldo tzion es baneho. That's written that in Yeshaya Novi, that Tzion, referring to Jerusalem and Yidden in general, are going to give birth to their sons. Yeah, well, that's the idea of the Geula. The Leida Zocha, not just stam children, but a male. The idea of a male is Moira ala Geula Chazoka. That it's not going to be just any form of a birth, but it's going to be a strong birth, because a zocha is a stronger and more forceful individual. And therefore, that indicates a geula chazoka. And what does that mean? She'ein achrei hagolus. Because we've had geulas in history. There's been geulas Mitzrayim was a geula shlema. And then we had geula from the Greeks, and we had geula, before that, we had geula from Achashverosh on Purim and all those. But the Gemara says in Beneged to those Geulas that Adayin Abdei Achashverosh Anan, even though it was a big Geula, but we still remain in Golos by Achashverosh. And even after Chanukah, the Greeks were driven away, but it wasn't a full Geula, from the whole world altogether like it's going to be when Mashiach will come. So that led further to further Golosin, which led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, Rachmanin Litzlan, and Yidden went into the present Golos. So therefore, it's not a Golos she'ein acharei a Gula, a Gula she'ein acharei a Golos, slicha. There's still a following of a Golos after the Gula. But he said the idea of a Zocha being given birth to indicates a strong Gula, which means there won't be any further Golos. He said, Valbias Mashiach, Shemagia, Medaga, Nailas Me'ay. That Mashiach, it's indicatory not just of Gula, but also of the actual neshama of Mashiach himself, that he will come from a very, very high madrega, what's called Al-Pi Kabbalah, Me'alma D'Chayra. Me'alma D'Chayra means from the world of maleness. D'Chayra in Aramaic means male state, the state of a male. D'Chayra, yeah, B'Lashon HaKabbalah. So according to Kabbalah, there are two main worlds or ifanim in how the spheres affect all the worlds. There's what's called D'Chayra, and that's called Zohar. That's the Ikamidah, Zeir Ampin, Chesed, Gura, Tiferes, Neitzach, and then there's what we call Nukva. What Nukva means the female aspect, and that's Malchus. And Malchus is always a Hel and Vehester, and Malchus always hides what the other midas have to give in order to get a world. So therefore Nukva and femininity is always indicatory of Tzimtzum and Yerida. Of a D'Chayra is indicatory of maleness, and that's the midas before the Tzimtzum. That's the midas how they are in their take of the Gilad, what that's Zohar. And that's called Alma D'Chayra. So the Neshama of Melech HaMashiach is going to be a very high madrega, and it's going to come from that level. It's going to come from beyond Tzimtzum, beyond the Tzimtzum of Malchus. Now, who says all this? This is actually a quote from the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. It's well known that the Orach Chaim HaKodesh was a very big mishchev. He writes tremendously throughout his whole great period, a lot about Mashiach and about Ramazim, in the Pesukim about Mashiach. So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says that Isha is referring to Yidden B'klal. Isha is a way of referring to Knesset Yisrael. Ki Tazria, he said that when Yidden are in the Golos, their avodah is like a sowing the whole time. It's like the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Zayin that the coming of Mashiach is dependent in our avodah Meshach Zban HaGolos. That the way we prepare in the Golos, that's the way we're going to get Mashiach. So the Orach Chaim said that even though Yidden are held back in the Golos and they suffer Yisurim and everything, but the greatness of Yidden is that everything Yidden do in the Golos, they see it as a sowing. They're like sowing the whole time. And he said, this parsha says, Isha ki Tazria v'yoldo zocha. And it's not talking just about doing and preparing, it's talking about seeing the ultimate Tetzora, and Yolda means that she gives birth, which means that something's coming into, like we said, Geula, later. And it's a Zocha. A Zocha indicates a very high madriga in Neshomas. What that's going to be Neshomas Moshiach, what he's going to come from this level of Alma to D'Chayra. That's what the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says. And he describes it very tremendously in his language, tremendously intensely, that despite the fact that Yidden are in Golos, they're sowing the whole time. And he said Yidden have never really admitted that they're in Golos. They're the whole time sowing for something much better. And therefore he said Yidden don't see themselves as just being locked hopelessly in Golos, but they're sowing the whole time to eventually get to the reaping. So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says that this parsha is indicatory of the reaping. Because Isha ki Tazria, that's the Golos in general, but Yolda Zocha means that the Gula is already happening. As they write the Orach Chaim HaKodesh.
If we're reaping, isn't that already Mashiach?
Huh? That's what he said. That's what he said.
It's already here.
Yolda Zocha means the Mashiach.
We're doing it.
Yeah, Veloshon HaKabbalah. So be'etzem kol ha'posik medaber ala geula. So the Rebbe not just certain words, but he said the whole posik refers to the geula. Isha ki Tazria mesamel es b'nei Yisrael. Well, because they are ishtoi shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki yadua, the Yidden are compared to as being the Eibishter's wife, literally. Yeah, therefore, Isha, which she will, like we said, be fruitful and give forth zera, bezman hagolos. Oz heim zoirim. They are all the time, like we said in the name of the Chaim HaKodesh, they are planting. They're not just sitting around weeping about the golos, but they're planting. Everything is like a planting for the Ossi. Zoirim esatero mitzvahs umekayim moison. Avalui royim esatzmicha. For the time being in the golos, they haven't yet seen the actual growing. They're sowing, but they haven't seen it actually growing out. He said, therefore they don't see the result of what they're doing. The whole the time they're planting. Yeah, or nirev, that we're going to see only at the time of the Geula v'yolda zochor. If I remember, this parsha does take the step of showing the Torah. The whole time in the Golos we're sowing, and that's a positive thing. But somebody who sows, he wants to see the result. He wants to see the actual growing and the actual flourishing of the plant. So that's the Eden of Yolda Zachor. So this parsha indicates the two things. It shows how Yidden never accept the Golas. They're always sowing, but it also shows the Torah that they get the final result, Yolda Zachor. So he said, that's Parsha Tazria. That's the first parsha. So he said, Parsha Metzora Kashura Yeshirot L'Geula. So the Rebbe, Parsha Metzora is directly connected straight away into the union of the Geula. How's that? He said, Gemara, so Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, because of Sheshmoi Shal Mashiach Hu Metzora. The Gemara says, what's with Mashiach? Where is he? So the Gemara says he's a chivera de beis Rabbi. He's a sick man, and that's a way of referring to a Metzora in the Gemara. He's he's suffering from tzoras, Moshiach, and he's called the Metzora obeys Rabbi. And Rabbi is referring to Rabbeinu Yehuda HaKodesh. And later on, the Rebbe is going to be manged. What does Rabbi Yehuda HaKodesh have to do with it? You know, what's his kesher with the whole thing?
GAFNE, could you say something about what is SARS? How did he get sick? What is leprosy?
Huh?
How did he get the disease?
What is it?
Lashon Hara.
It's not leprosy. It's not leprosy.
Tzoras.
Yeah.
Tzoras means the Nagoyim.
Like Miriam.
Tzoras means the Nagoyim. So literally, Moshiach is suffering from Nagoyim. He's suffering because he's suffering from the Golos. He wants to suffer. And on the contrary,
Lashon Hara.
he's suffering from our addition to the Golos. We're literally we're also working to be Mavatal of the Golos. But if you're not working to be Mavatal of the Golos, then in a certain delicate way you're adding to the Golos. And Mashiach is suffering from that. That's what he's suffering.
But it's from different causes. In the Chumash, it's from a different reason. Why should he have this?
He has our suffering.
He has us. He's the collective of all of us. He's accepting it.
Can you speak a little more loudly?
Anyway, it'll all become clear.
Collectively
It's all going to
taking
become
on
clear.
himself all our tzaras. All our tzaras.
It's written there in the Gemara that he's sitting amongst other Metzora, other ones who are also suffering. But that's a remes to Klal Yidden in the Golas. So it's written that all the people are busy bandaging their, putting on bandages and things to sort of hide or in some way heal the tzoras. It's written Moshiach doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to bandage his. So the Gemara said, why doesn't he bandage? They said the Gemara is waiting every second that Kodesh Baruch is going to tell him he has to go and redeem the Yidden. And if he'll be in the middle of bandaging his bandage, that's going to hold him up for a few minutes. No, somebody has to show a bit of his bias. In other words, Moshiach is so anxious to go and redeem the Yidden, he's not prepared to look after himself. Because the looking after himself will take a couple of minutes away from going to be redeemed the Yidden.
Wow. If he becomes completely white.
Anyway, so he says of the Gemara, it's written that the name of Mashiach is a Metzora. Gam kasher Shaul Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi es Eloyanovi. Also it's brought down over there in the Gemara that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked Eliyahu, Heichen nimta Mashiach, whereabouts is he? Why is he taking so long? Where is he hidden? So it's written, Onaloi Eliyahu, Shamoshiach hu Metzora. He's a leper, he's suffering from tzoras. V'yesha bein Metzoraim, seiv lo chaloim. He's sitting amongst Metzorim that they're putting up with pain and illness. And that's where Moshiach is. That's what, it's also brought down over in the Gemara. So Moshiach nikra Metzora. Why is he called a Metzora? Why should Moshiach be a Metzora? Human who begolas. Moshiach is part of the Golos. He's not going to be some angel which come down from the outside and not have any part of the Golos with it. He's in the Golos with us. And he's putting up with what we're putting up, Moshiach. And on the contrary, we're even adding to his Cholim by our lack of enthusiasm. And therefore, says the Rabbi, Moshiach is with us in the Golos, and his Tzoraz is the cave and the Tsar of the Golos. He said, Ulam Parshas Metzora, Metayer says, Yom Taharosai. He said, the Chiddush of Parshas Metzora is, it's written, Zois Teiros HaMetzora, B'Yom Taharosai, and the day that he's becoming pure. Is a sign that Metzora, Pasha Metzora mentions that he's a Metzora, but it says immediately on the day of his purification. So we're talking about how he's getting out of the state of being a Metzora and he's becoming pure. And therefore the whole Parsha deals with the different things that Kohen has to do to make him pure. So it's a sign that Metzora is overly connected with the Gula, because it's dealing with how to get out of the Golas altogether, how to purify Moshiach from the Golas. So therefore he says that Metayer says Yom Taharosei Shel Moshiach. Yeah, Ashlav Boi Hu Mitgaleh. Yom means Gilui. Yom, the Rebbe brings in the Sikha, is indicatory of revelation. So that's already the final state before Moshiach actually is Mizgala B'Poyo, because that's the final process in which he's being Mitgaleh, and he will come and he will redeem the Yidden. Begula Hamidis Vashlema. So we see him saying that all the Parshas, both of them have got to do with the Geula. First of all, Yola Zocha is indicative of the whole Geula, and then the whole inner of Metzora is how Moshiach is being prepared and purified from the Golas, that he's just going to get out and come, B'Yom Taharosei, on the day of his purification. And so the Rebbe said it's all talking about him, Cain, the Geula. So from this we've got two parshas that they are indicatory of the Indian of the Geula. And so that's pretty amazing when you think about it. I don't know if you would have come to that conclusion on your own, but that's what it is. So we're going to see that it's not so simple, because a large part of this parsha Tazria deals with the Nagoim, how do you call them? Use for lack of a better word, the leprosy. That's not a correct translation, but the Nagoim that occur, they are all explained in Parsha Tazria, and they would indicate the Golas. They're negative things, they would tend to indicate the Golas. So if the first posik is all about the Geula, then why is the rest of the Parsha all about the Golas? You follow? That's a question we're going to have to deal with. Adayin Ainin Loi Borakoka. So the Rebbe, it's not so simple as all that. He said, one, for the first reason is that Tazria, Masamo es Tazria B'Haleida Shalagiula, like we said. The Indian of Zohar indicates a very strong and permanent Geula, but it indicates the whole idea of Leida and Geula. Ve'ilo Metzora, the word Metzora itself is Moira Davke Alagoda. So when you join those two words together, they're like two opposites, but they don't fit together. Tazria indicates the Geula B'Poel. Metzora deals with the processes of the Geula, but the word Metzora itself implies Golas. So that to join the two words, Metzora and Tazria, it doesn't quite fit. So he said, V'ilu Metzora Moira Davke Alagodas Lifnei Tahara. It's going to describe what is the Tahara in the Geula, but it didn't begin with that yet. How can you join the two of them together and they become one name of the whole parsha? So he said, the second question is that Ika Hasha'ila He Shachrei Sheyesh Kwa Tazria. Well, we said that's the leader of the Geula Hanitzchiyah, because Zohar indicates power in the Geula. She'ein Acharei Golos Lo Yishayach Sheyagia Chacham Metzora Agolos. You can't, once you've said Tazria indicates the Geula that there's no other Golos after it, then why do you mention the word Metzora? The word Metzora doesn't fit in if you've already got an everlasting Geula on your hands, and you can't go back and mention the word Metzora. So they said the Rebbe Davke b'Pashat Tazria Hamoira ala Geula Masupa Chachal al Dinin Agoyim, which are Torah. He said the pili is that even though Tazria is a basura of the Geula She'ein Acharei Golos, he said immediately afterwards the Pasha deals right to the end with the inyanim of Dini Nagoyim, all the maris and the different ways the Kohen has to paskin and put people, lock them up for a week and work out and so on. It's all to do with the inyan of the Neged Torah. He said, Parshas Metzora, Amoira ala Golas, what the word Metzora indicates Mashiach is still in Golas. Yeah, Masufa Davke al Tarsa Metzora. Yeah, Davke over there, it all talks about how to get him out of them. So the two pashas seem to move in the opposite direction. The Pasha Tazria begins with the Indian of the Geula, but then it moves back into the Golas. And Pasha Metzora begins with a word which indicates the Indian of Golas, but then it moves into the Geula. So each Pasha in its own right seems to be working back to front. So he says, Davke ala Tarsa Metzora, Geula, Mea Golas, Hoyamati Miyesa, Shel Parsha Shemisaperes al Nagoyim Yikru Metzora. So he said, Parsha Tazria, that should be called Metzora. That's talking big about the dinim of the Goyim. Well, a Parsha Misaprim al Taras Metzora. Yeah, Geula Yikru Tazria. The second Parsha should be called Tazria because it's dealing mostly with the purification. You follow the first Parsha mentions the Geula, but then it deals only with all the dinim of the Geula. So call that Metzora. And call the other Parsha Tazria. So the Rebbe says, Lama Davke, another question, HaMoshiach, Shehu HaGoyol Shel B'nai Yisrael. He is the one who is going to bring the Geula to all the Yidden, Nikra Metzora. Why should we call him a name like that? Sheshem Zeh Moira Davke Ala Golas V'Achoyli. Since he's Moshiach, and so Moshiach's whole in is to bring Geula, that's what he's going to do, L'Poel. Why does he have a name in the Gemara? And they ask, where's Moshiach and who is he? And the Gemara says, oh, he's a Metzora. So why would Moshiach's name be Metzora? He should have another name altogether, which doesn't indicate the idea of the take of Hagolah. And indicates a union for Machlo, how they call it, Choylioi, Shel Hagolah. So those are the questions. So the Rebbe says like this. And here's the main revolution of the whole thing that the Rabbi throws. And the Rabbi chooses a maimah in Likutei Torah where the Alter Rebbe says that the Golas, the Negoim, which indicate the Golas, the Negoim are really very, very high matters. They're very, very high inyanim. And they can only occur to somebody who's very gifted and high in Ruchnias. Because we see that in Pasha Tazria, when it begins talking about the Negoim, it uses the word Odom. It starts off with the word Odom, and it says, Odom, ki yeh bo'er b'soroi, kach v'kach. If you have in the skin of his flesh certain signs, then it leads to Torah. So it's well known that the word Odom is, of all the names that we can give a man, Odom is the highest name. And it's put down that there are 4 names, Odom, Enosh, Gever, and Ish, Odom, Ish, Enosh, and Gever. They're the 4 names. So Odom is the highest. So Odom is the highest madriga, and the Shloah Kodesh says that Odom is from the word to compare, Adameh le'elyoin. The word Odom is indicative of the match how he's similar to Elokus, how he's in the image of the Eibishter. So that's a very high madriga. So what's he doing getting a negel? Was it Odom? Sorry. So the Rebbe says like this. It's written over there in Likutei Torah in a short maimah. The Rebbe brings down from the Rambam and a whole thing, the Alter Rebbe, and he says like this. He said, "Kedei lahavin kol zeis torik lahavin koidem, mahim be'etzem hanigoim v'hatzorah." What are really these plagues that hit people as described in the parsha? So he said, "B'chassidus mavur she'odam sheyesh lo tzoraz," that a mensch in the madriga of Odom, that he gets one of these different forms of tzoraz, simanhu shekol ma'asov metukonim. Exactly the opposite of what you might think. That's a sign that he's a very perfect individual. When I say perfect, he's a very elevated individual, but he's not perfect. In other words, he's a man, Odom. He's very elevated, but there's a little bit that he hasn't finished yet. So he said, Shekol ma'asov metukonim, fixed, and they belong to the world of Tikkun. He said, V'kol koiches nafshei mushlamim, and all the powers of his soul have been also perfected and brought to a madriga perfection. Yevi'avu pikein, and nonetheless, nisha etzloi yechisoren koton. There's still by him a little lacking, some little something that's almost unnoticeable to the observer, but it's there, a sort of a hidden little something that he hasn't completed. That particular little chisaron he hasn't fixed up yet. Therefore, only on the chitzonius of the man, only on the outside part of him, not in his neshama, not even on the inner organs of the body, but only on the outside skin of the body. Simone Tzorah, Mashamoire, Shebecho, Koiches Nafshei, Ein Ra. In all the koiches that he has, there's no evil. Varach, Bechitzonius, Nisha, Kitzas, Pesela. That in the very chitonius, there's a little bit of waste material, something that's not been never purely to Kedusha, and that's possible for the Ra to come along, and so the clippers can have a little bit of a chap there, and they can sort of chap on this outside thing, and it's like on the outside of his levushim. That's what the Alter brings there. That's not in the etzem hakoiches. In the 10 powers of the soul, that's not there b'klal, only in machshava dibur u'maisa, and only in that itself, also in a very minimal and chitzoniistic way. So it comes out of his head that a person who gets a tzoraz is a very high person, and therefore it makes sense to call him Odom. He said, Yosemikak, a posek hoima b'kesher lo tzoraz, Odom, ki yeh be'er b'soroi. K'loima, שהנגע לא קשור אפילו לבשר של האדם. Now, what then? It's in an even oir b'soroi, in the skin of his flesh. In other words, not in the flesh, it's in the chitzonius of the flesh. El arach lo oir shemisaviv lebasar. The oir is only an outer thing which surrounds the basar. V'gam zeh lo yirogio el bo b'mikra. It only just comes occasionally in the form of something just happens. El bo b'mikra, and that's the Russian ki yeh, if it will be. It's not something permanent, and it's not something lasting, and it's not an obvious thing. It just occasionally happens, and therefore it's written ki yeh. Ki yeh means if it will be like that. He said, v'gam k'shazem magia zerach nega tzorav. So the Rabbi says the word nega indicates just touching. The word nega is from the word nogeya. Nogeya means just to touch. Now remember, something that just touches him, but doesn't really get into him. It just touches the outside of him. So therefore he says, Zehu rach nega tzorav. Zerach nogeya boy. It's not really shayach to him, it just touches him. And where does it touch him? Also only in the skin, only in the pure chitzoniyos. Contrary said, the nega tzoraz is the Rambam writes over the Alter Rebbe quotes the Rambam in the Shmoina Prokim. The Rambam writes that these are only Ma'aser Nisim. It's all a thing she'ein lozeh mochim b'teva. As I writes the Rambam, that people who are so elevated and perfect should all of a sudden be visited with a outside thing like that, which shows up on their outside of their bodies. Well, that's a divine thing which is miraculous. And it comes only to indicate to them that they're not finished yet, that they've still got to be mavara, this little trace of rubbish or perselas at the bottom of their whole Aveda. He said, of a Chassidus mavairim gam, shelifnei shahakoyen koiveya, shanagoim elo hinam simon tuma, anagoim ahim davke devorim gavoyim, va'oiros elyonim. Now here the Rabbi is touching on a very famous point, where all the Meforshim deal with it. It's also brought down in the Mishnah and everything, and that is that a person who's got a nega is not tomei until the Kohen says that he's tomei. He can have all the nega and he can be b'shleimas with the nega, but he's not tomei. When does he become tomei? Only when the Kohen paskin that he's tomei. Which means that the Kohen has a power that through his words, the Kohen brings about a Matthias, an opposite of Tahara. But prior to that, he's not Tomei, even though he's got the Torah. And the reason why the Kohen brings that about, because that's the way to lead to the tikkun. Eventually, he's going to be able to correct the whole thing through that. But if nobody would say that he's Tomei, then nobody's going to bother with it. So Kuntai said, the whole inner of the tumah here is only a gezerah on the part of the kohen, which is the purpose eventually of leading to a higher. But what about when he's got the nega but the kohen hasn't paskin? So the Alter Rebbe writes over there that is a state of oirois elyonim, that he's in a very high state. Before the Kohen paskins that he's tomei, well, that nega is from a very high madrega, and he uses two words about it. He says dvarim gavoyim, elevated things, v'oiros elyonim, and very high lights from a very high madrega. V'nikurim b'loshen ha'kabbalah v'chsidas dina kashia de kedusha, the hard din of the kedusha. In other words, a gevura of a sort, which is a gevura kedusha. Now, in order for us to understand that, what does he mean by the lashon dina kashia de kedusha? It's like this: the Alter Rebbe is masbih in the Siddur, and I get to Tkiya Shefer very nicely the whole meaning. And the Alter Rebbe says, where beklal does gevura become like din? It becomes like a judgment. It doesn't want to give certain things. Gevura is one of the midas of Hashem, and all the midas of Hashem are giving. So he says that the inyan from Gevura is a very high level of desire on the part of Hashem to give, and therefore he forces himself to give. He wants to give, but once the highest possible madrega in Hashem starts coming out in a way that it's being given, then the angels and the worlds and everything say, hey, wait a minute. To get a gift like that, you've got to be worthy. So they start asking a question, is the Makabel worthy to receive it? And the Makabel doesn't just mean one person. It means all the worlds and all the madregas and the malachim and everything. All those things. So therefore the Gevura begins saying, wait a minute, we can't give this to everybody. And therefore it becomes like a judgment, a din. And that's called din akashia. That's called a hard line in the union of Gevura to Kedusha. But it's really a very high madrega. And why does it become din akashia? Davki, because of the highness of the madrega, as it were, the Kedusha doesn't want to give that unless it's perfection. And therefore it becomes like a din. And that's what's called din akashia de kedusha. Well, it's not really a inyan dinim in the real sense. It's like a inyan holding back due to the greatness of the matter. And therefore said the Rabbi Koloid that they haven't paskin about you, the koyan, that you're Tomei. You're not Tomei, but you're revealing very, very high levels of very high madregas that have shown up on you because you're a good person. And you're a very elevated person, and that's how the Rebbe learns in the Goyim. But it's all hidden there in Lakuti Torah, in that famous Maimon, but to taste it out like that, you got to be the Rebbe. The Rebbe says, "Aderek l'tahara." So how do we get to the tahara? Once the Kohen says about it that it's Tomei, that's in order to get to a higher inyan. So how do we get there? So he says, "Nitzan loyma sheshnei biurim elu." That these two explanations that we've just given, shetorah ze peselas mu'etes. It's only a little rubbish at the bottom of a person's avodah. Ushetorah ze eres elyonim, and that its mokeh is very highlight. Tiruim echad b'sheni. We could say that these two inyonim are dependent one in the other. So he said, how can we say that? So Mekirin Shanagoyim Heim Oiris El Yoinim Be'etem. They're very, very high madregas. V'lochein Gam Kishemisiva Kolshu Heim Yodu Mimadregosum V'nitnu Koiches L'Chitonium. He said, even if we'll say, since there's such very high lights, even if there's been something, a slight fall, and they go down in a way that they can join up with the, how do you call it, the chitzanim, with the koiches shliliyim, with the clippers. He said, Gam oz hara shenoitza mehem hu chitzanim b'vad. Even though they've gone down and they've been put in, as it were, to the hands of the clippers, as you might say, but not completely. It's only in a outside way, and therefore it comes out in the mensch also only in an outside fashion. He said, "V'lochein yekedei l'tachen zois lo tzorich shum dover noiser." We don't need anything extra in order to fix the whole situation. Rak legalois es ha'inyan ha'amiti. All we need to do is just show what is the real emes story of these negoim, and that itself will correct and take away the slight falling into the hands of the clippers that was necessary by the small fault on the part of this person. But if we'll just reveal the emes shoyder of the whole inyan of the negoim, everything will be all right. And so therefore he said we have to be megala, the inyan amiti shal negoim, sheheim be'etzem eres elyonim. Like we said, they're very, very high madregas. V'loch, su, kosu, Benakela Taras Hametzora, Zeis Tier Teres Hametzora, B'Yoim Taharasoi. Yoim is the name for Gilui. What does Yom do? Yom lights up what was before in darkness. So what does it mean on the day of his purification? That we're going to light up what is really the whole problem. We're going to get back to the Shiur, and that indicates a very high inyan, and once we got that far, then we can fix everything up. He said, Ki kedei l'taher es ha-Metzora tzorich rak laho'ir v'legalois, well, that's the word yom. Es inyonim shel ha-negoim, that they are really very high in yonim, v'zeh levad, that itself, yevatel v'yetaher, gam es ha-ma'at hara shenoyte mehem. There's a little bit of ra that came at the perseilus of this great person. Once you reveal what the real theme is of the Negoim is, it'll all adjust itself. It'll all come good. Because really they are very, very high madrigas in Oiros Elyon. So therefore the Rebbe says that's the secret of the whole Inim. So we're going to see that ha-yechoilet sheyesh la-chitonim ula-ra the Kabul highest mi'a'eres alienim shalanagoyim. We need to ask a question. We said that the clippers do get a little bit of something. They do sort of chapon at the chitonis of this person's avodah. If the Nagoyim are really so high, then how do they get there? How do they get there, the chitonim? How can they get in there? So the Rebbe says the ability that the chitonim, meaning the clippers, and the ra have to receive that little bit that they do receive from the Oiros Elyonim of the Negoim, bo me'aveder shemerei ma'alosom shel ha'Oiros Elyonim ein heim yechilim laredes v'leislavish bekelim ha'amurim yelachochil oisam. He said the whole problem is that these Oiros Elyonim are such high in Yonim, but what the Abisha wants is of all high things that they have to come down and enter vessels. The purpose of everything is that all revelations have to eventually become part of the Seder of the Elam through being mitlabesh in a Keli. Oir B'li Keli is Torah. It's not the ultimate perfection, not the ultimate purpose. So he said, why is it that these Oiros Elyonim are able to give a little bit of feed to the clippers? Because they haven't yet been matzliach in coming down and entering Kalim. In other words, they're Oiros to Toyu, but they haven't come into the Kalim. They haven't entered the vessels yet.
That's our fault.
Of the Metzora.
And that's our fault.
Torah. Yeah, therefore they feed a little bit to the clippers, because they're not doing their emasatars. They haven't entered the Kalim. So the Rebbe said, they haven't entered the Kalim ha'amurim ha'achilosom. Yeah, ha'oiros ha'elyonim shoivrim es ha'kalim. They're breaking the Kalim. U'keteitzor mikach nitnim koiches l'chitonim to the Ra. And therefore, from the fact that they can't relate to the Kalim, there's a sort of an unevenness there, what we call a breakage, and from that the clippers are able to chap in and draw. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is going to tell us that that's all due to the Avodah of the Odom. All of these things, their problem is in the Odom himself. Because these Oiros Elyonim, they represent in the Odom what we call Rotzoi. Tremendously high lights where you want to go out and sort of be lit up, and you want to be away from the world, and you want to be very high in Yonim and become completely swept up in Oiros Elyonim. That's called Rotzei. And what's with the Bnei Aaron? That's what the Rebbe is going to connect with the beginning of Pasha Achrei. The Bnei Aaron, for example, they went like that, and they just went up, and they couldn't come down. They couldn't come back. They just were sick up of they're fed up with the whole thing of being in a goof in the world. They just went up and they never came back. And that's Kaviyoho a fault. That's not the way it should be. You have to be able to come back down. So the Rebbe said the whole problem with the Negoim is that they're Rotzoi, but they don't have Shoy. They don't have Emes HaShoy. And the Emes HaTikun for the whole Inyan of the Negoim is the Inyan of Shoy, that you have to come down and bring the high lights into Kalim. And if you do that, then you cut off the whole Inyan. And the Rebbe is going to say, ultimately, that that's the Inyan of Limud Torah. So when you learn Torah, then you bring, and ultimately you create a balance in the whole universe between the Aliyah and the coming back down, in a way that the greatest of the oiras are able to unite with the kelim. And therefore the Rebbe is going to say at the end of the whole Sikha that we have to learn Torah about the Gula and Moshiach. The whole way to bring the Gula B'Poel is to learn the Inyan Torah, which is Shai to Gula and Moshiach, because through the Inyan of Torah, we have the ability and the power to bring down these highest oiras and make them part of the world. And that will be the Geula, that they will enter the highest possible light and the highest possible neshama, but that's the Zohar of Moshiach. They will come down into the world and unite and be expressed through the world. Davkir. And that's the whole Indian of Torah. That's the function of what Torah really achieved. And that's going to be the Rebbe's message as we go along. So I don't know how far we're going to get, but I'm giving you the sort of, the light up. So therefore says the Rebbe, if we'll translate this whole concept into, paths of practicality, as then we'll say like this, they bring to what we call desire to go out and to be shy only to Ruchnis and to go up into high inyanim and to leave the world behind. But that's Rotzei. Es tnuas hanefesh la'alois ulehicholel beir Hashem. But that's the movement on the part of the nefesh. Odom, he wants to go up and he wants to be niklal, involved completely only in Elokus and to be just one with the divine light altogether. That's all he wants. Raki said, Lisachi imaberi isbara. His whole concern is only to become one with the Creator. Umichuka zulavad, just from that on its own, that can eventually lead to unique lechitzonim. Why? Because that's not the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is to bring everything down and Davki reveal it in the world. Yeah? Kamesha Royim, Shachrei Slavas Patfila. This is a word from the Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe brings it down B'Shem Baal Shem Tov, and there's a reference in the big Gemara Makimis to different mitzvahs about the Baal Shem Tov. That the Baal Shem Tov said that sometimes you got to be careful if you daven very well and you get into a big Yisoiras, then after the davening, you have to sit down and learn Torah, or do something which will bring that Ava into a ordered expression, Al-Pi Torah in the world. Otherwise, what is Ava? Ava is like a Soirat, All of a sudden you get angry about something. All of a sudden you fly into cars where you get offended by somebody, just said something and you get all offended, or something. You fly into what they call a capeda or something like that. You've got to be very careful that there shouldn't be what's called a yanika lechitonim. And the way to do that is only by bringing it all down into kelim, and that's through limit Torah. So therefore the Rebbe says, "Machuka zulavad yocholiyesh kayches v'yanika lechitonim akamoisha royim she'achar hislavos b'tefila yocholiyesh achar hakas oikapeda chas v'sholim." Yeah, if you see somebody and you, according to your high opinion, you think he's not doing the right thing. It could be that as far as he's concerned, he's doing the right thing. Or because you got up into such a istalgus mi'akelim and you're not functioning in an ordered way of kelim in the world, and you think he's doing the wrong thing, you get all angry with him, and the poor guy's not to blame. He's doing the right thing according to what his madrega and his understanding. Mm-hmm. So therefore the Rebbe said, "Pisorin lazeh hu alidei mashanikra tnuas ashoi." You got to come back and bring down into the world alidei habitl hamuflat Hashem. And here's the big part of it. So the Rebbe here on says that the only way to bring the gula is bittul. We've got to give away all ourselves completely. And he said, how do you bring down the oya? You've got to give away all your own feelings. all your own inyonim, and you've got to go according to what is the will of Hashem. So the will of Hashem may at that particular moment say something slightly different than what your will is. Yeah, and yet nonetheless, you've got to do it Hashem's way. And that's called bittul. And that is the yesod of the whole Chassidus Chabad. I remember my Mashpia said that the whole Chassidus Chabad is built around the word bittul. If we can only understand what bittul is about, then we can know what Chassidus is about. So therefore said the Rabbi, it's got to be a bittul muchlat, not just a little bit. It's got to be complete bittul. K'moi eved she'oimed lifnei amelech ke'eved doimeim. When an eved stands in front of the king, he goes like a stone, He just freezes completely because he's completely out of his own materials. He'll come to add in Torah mitzvahs, but he will do more than what he was doing because he had enthusiasm. So that enthusiasm will become real in doing more. And then he'll carry out what's his real shlichus, his real task in this world, and he will increase the whole time. So since he will increase, then he's bringing the oilam selyenim that were there in the Torah, he's bringing them down into the world and using them the way they're really meant to be used, and that's the inyan of Taras and Metzora, that's the inyan of the Geula. So it follows that we've got to get up into enthusiasm, but we've got to translate the enthusiasm into more Torah, more mitzvahs, almanas, to bring to the Geula. And if it'll be that way, then that's the Rebbe says that later on, in the next couple of chapters, he said that together with bittul, there has to be Mesiras Nefesh. And he said the big chiddush of the Golas all the years is they didn't have to have Mesiras Nefesh. He said in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the Mesiras Nefesh was different altogether, because everything was begalui. Everybody saw everything. It wasn't hard to give yourself away to Hashem. It was all there. He said, when you're in the Golden, you don't see anything. And yet, nonetheless, you give yourself away to Hashem. That's called Mesiras Nefesh. So he said, that's the key factor that is needed with the bittul. The bittul has to be in a form of Mesiras Nefesh. And that's what Mashiach is waiting for. He's waiting that we should take our enthusiasm and bring it into Torah mitzvahs for Mesiras Nefesh. That we're doing it purely because it's Ratzon Hashem, believe hitchashfut, what the world says or what somebody else says. And that's what the Friedrich Rebbe brings. But again, to shtus, to kedusha, you got to be prepared to be meshugah. You got to be. I've said it on a few times and I repeat, you've got to be a gesundter meshuganim. You've got to be mad, but you've got to be gesund. Gesund means that you bring it down into the world. And that's the whole inning. Why were these Negoim sent to a person named Cain? He's got an amazing opportunity to take the highest inyonim and bring them down into the world through bittul. Forget about himself and all his madrigas and all his inyonim, to use a bit of Mesiras Nefesh for the sake of Moshiach, and then we'll have him. We'll have him before you.
Amen.
So at the end, the Rebbe says, people say, well, it all makes good sense, but what does it mean, absolutely before you? So the Rebbe comes out with a famous inyan that through learning Shiurim, Rabbim, and making Shiurim about Moshiach, particularly a group of people together, well, that's the way to bring Moshiach before you. Because Torah is this koyach of bringing everything down into its proper kelim. And Torah shows us how to unite the highest lights with the kelim and to bring them into proper expression. And that's what the whole inyan of oiras to two, very, very high lights, but bekelim to tikkun. And that's what the Rebbe said in Kofet Nessen. That it has to be the highest thing, without limitation, but they've got to be ordered. It's got to come into an ordered fashion. It's got to express itself in Torah and mitzvahs in a way that will light up the world ordered first, not how to call it, hocus pocus, but ordered and emes away that there will be Gilei Lakus. And it's happening. The truth of the matter is that it's happening. And people all over are beginning to wake up. And I had a most amazing thing this week. I won't go into all the details, but I had there's a couple of Ingolite that I know in the yeshiva over there. They bought a goy from Stockholm in Sweden. Yeah, way over in Stockholm, in some suburb. And he wants to become a Yid. He wants to learn all about Yiddishkeit. And he's already taught himself Hebrew, and he already knows what's written in a Chumash. It's amazing. All from his own work, all on his own, he's done it. And so he made contact with one of these Ingolite through the email, and he said, I'm coming over to see you. He's not a poor man, he's got a bit of money. So he said, I'm coming over to see you. So he came all the way over just to meet this person and talk about how can he come closer to Torah. These sort of things didn't happen a few years ago. But since the Rabbi has spread the oasis of Kedusha all over the world, people are waking up, but they want to do it in a proper way. They don't just want to run out into the desert and the forest. Way back in the 60s, you had all these kids that they went out into the forest. In America, and they lived in a two-year way. They were not in cages. But these guys are not like that. These guys want to do it in order where they want to make the world a better place. And the truth is, he wants to set up a website. He wants to set up a website where you spread this all around in Sweden.
Sweden?
So it could be, if he gets going, that thousands of people in Stockholm are going to hear all about Torah and Metzora. So it's happening. It's gradually happening. What the Rebbe says here is Mamshach. So that's Oiris Elyonim. It's very, very high oil. He walked into the house, I could see straight away, something destroying it. And they said, listen, this is a guy, and so we decided we have to bring him to GAFNE. We have to first of all meet GAFNE and talk with him a bit, and this and that. So I sat and spoke with him for about 45 minutes. I sat and spoke with him, and I was just mind-boggling. And this is happening all over the world, so it's working. So the Rebbe said, get excited, but bring it down and make a good website. For example, I heard the other day from a guy that he said that there are all sorts of websites about Kabbalah. It's a big thing now. It's also got a lot of things which are not the same. People get involved in this Kabbalah business and all that. And somebody told, what's his name?
Bird?
No. I've forgotten his name.
Madonna?
Told him that a sense got a website, where they also teach about the Kabbalah, but it's based on Tziddah. So this person said he's been in all the websites about the Kabbalah, but he said the best one is this one. He said the best one is this one. So this guy came to me and he said, why did he say that the best one is ours? They got much better posh things than what we got. Ours is posh compared to them. Why? Because it's from our Rabbi.
Yeah.
It went through the Alter Rebbe, and it went through the Rebbe. That's the best. Doesn't have to be rich, doesn't have to be posh. It just talks in the name of our Rabbi. That's it.
What's his profession?
That's the Emes of Kabbalah.
What's his profession?
He's got about 4 businesses going now. And I didn't quite get from him exactly what it is. But he's got some sort of, and he wants to bring in a situation where other people will look after his business for him, and he will study Torah the whole time.
Oh, come on. And he doesn't bring down the lights.
And he said, he's not a Jew. He said, I will study Torah whole time.
He needs a mishpia or something. You gotta give him a knock on the head and chase him away.
So it's happening.
Tell him to run as fast as he can.
It's happening. The whole world.
Run.
The whole world is becoming kalim For Eres to Teil, and they're coming down into Kalim to Ja.
Dubbel de Chaim hebben ze.
Ja, dat is dan een
The Sharkoach Chabad. The Sharkoach Chabad. A voice in the Sharkoach. Ready to plots on it.